Hey everyone, welcome to the show, and we are live. Hey everyone, and welcome live to the show. I appreciate you being here, and welcome with me the guy that I did not get a picture of eating a hot dog at Big Iron Rally. Jeremiah, appreciate you coming to the show, man.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, man.
We both have just gotten back from last weekend, Big Iron Rally in West Mineral, Kansas. Had a big time there, showing off all of our stuff and listening to a bunch of really good bands. Hats off to Chris for putting on another great event. I really enjoyed the event and really had a great time.
He's
Enjoyed
two
having,
for two right now, man.
yeah, super cool, super cool.
Yeah.
What did you feel like that event was different than others?
Yeah, just it felt more like a hangout, more like a concert series with
Yeah,
awesome camping. So it was
yeah,
it was a lot better, I think, for that purpose. I don't but there's also really not any trails in that area.
yeah.
So I think it served its purpose for its area.
Yeah, I think it did too, and I think Chris did a really good job of creating something different for everybody to come to. The bands were really good, and it had a huge variety. From the one man band on Friday all the way up to the sounded like Pink Floyd was playing Saturday night. I mean, it was just run the gamut from one to the other. So it was pretty cool, I thought.
Well, that band Arkansas was amazing. I went and downloaded their music right away. Yeah.
Yeah, they're pretty cool. They're pretty popular around these parts, and we enjoy listening to them for sure. Well, Jeremiah, tell us about Overland Pioneers. How did Overland Pioneers start?
Well, it started. We had an old JK, a 2014 JK, and we had a Congo cage on it and a high vis tent, and we just kind of wanted to get into it. Just expedition overland, to be honest. I know it's everyone's like, oh, they got us into it. They got me into it.
Yeah,
I'm a videographer, so the videography skills really impressed me. The event that really solidified it for me was the Keweenaw Overland Adventure Retreat up in the Keweenaw Peninsula of Upper Michigan.
yeah,
That was a blast. So that really got me into it. And at that point, I had met Tim from X Ventures. And I was like, hey, man, I'm probably going to be buying a Scout trailer. We were just talking about trailers in general. And he had seen some of our work. And so from there, he's like, is there an opportunity to work together? So I said, yes. So from there, it just turned into more of a business as much as traveling, because I do love filming as much as traveling.
right.
So yeah, so for us, it was being able to do something we love, not miss out on income while we're traveling for my main business, and which is real estate marketing, and then being able to travel more. So trying to get up to
Yeah,
like 100 days a year is the goal.
yeah,
So
for sure. Now, do you consider yourself a YouTuber who overlands or an overlander who YouTubes?
I consider myself a guy who overlands to get the content for these guys. The perk is I get to overland and make content for the same,
Yeah,
for all these people I work with. A lot of the stuff that we put out, we don't even put out. We're not even in it. We're just, the most you see of us are the hands putting something together, and then we send it to the companies we work with. So
right.
we enjoy making content for other companies more than making it about us. It's
Yeah,
if
for
you
sure.
watch our videos, you'll see me in the video maybe once or twice the video, but the rest is the vehicle and what we're doing, where we're going.
Yeah,
I want
that's
to make it
true.
about the
And
travel. I want to make it
yeah,
about the travel and less about us.
yeah, that's true. Um, really enjoy your videos. You have such a soothing voice, and your
Oh,
your
stop.
commentary is just it just, makes me want to relax. And that's what I'm looking for when I come home in the evening, is something to relax to. And when I turn on and your voice just comes through and you talk about what we're doing, and,
Oh, stop.
and it's just amazing. So you should really open up massage therapy where you just talk to people, because it would just be amazing.
Is it ASRM is where someone just like calmly talks into a microphone? Is that what that is?
Yeah. You and Delilah would get along really well in the evenings. So no, anyway, man, I really appreciate you coming on here. I really have an interest in the Trans-America Trail. For me, that was something that really piqued my interest, the Trans-America Trail, because I'm a motorcycle guy and been a motorcycle guy for years. And when somebody came out with a route that was completely dedicated to as much off-road as you possibly could, East Coast to West Coast, that piqued my interest. And so I know you ride a very interesting motorcycle. I saw it at Moore Expo for the very first time. You don't have to put a lot of gas in it, which is pretty cool. I like that. But what piqued your interest for the Trans-America Trail? Why video this?
Trail Spin TV. Brandon and Braxton. I don't know if you know their story, if you've heard of them, but a couple years back, Brandon put on Facebook, "Hey, I need a videographer to go on this trip with me." And I don't think there was any money involved. It was, "Hey, help me build something." And Braxton answered the call. And they never met before. They met up in North Carolina and started the Trans-American Trail. And Braxton's an amazing videographer. And since then, Brandon's become an amazing videographer. And they did the whole thing out west and filmed it and showed every nitty gritty part about it. So that really piqued my interest. So I started in North Carolina section. I was just going to do it state by state. So I did North Carolina, where I started Tellico Plains and went south, and it ends in Virginia. It starts in Virginia and goes down to Tellico Plains, Tennessee. And then the next section we did Virginia from the same sort and went north. And then from West Virginia, there's called Spurs. Sam Cornero, I believe, is the guy who made this trail up. He goes from West Virginia all the way out to Nags Head Island. So and then we did Tennessee and Mississippi recently. So each state has had its own interesting geography. North Carolina is by far the prettiest, I would say, for the Appalachian Mountain region. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Appalachians are incredible.
So that first trip, we went with a buddy of mine who was on an enduro bike. And I now see why most people ride an enduro bike, because you can make so many more miles. He was flying and just waiting for us at turns. So I felt kind of sorry for him, but we had a good time nonetheless.
Do you think that the complete Trans-America Trail is able to be completed in a four-wheel drive, even though it wasn't created for a four-wheel drive?
Yeah, there are two Facebook groups. One that is Trans-American Trail, to the two-wheel enduro bikes, and there's one for four-wheel drive, and they have a lot of great information, especially when it comes to like seasonal trail closures, or if there's a big washout. Like I came across a washout on this Mississippi section,
right? Which
I had to. It wasn't in the video because I couldn't film it and do it at the same time. Which was detach the trailer, turn the Jeep around Austin Power style 100-point turn, and then flip the trailer in the mud, and then rehook and get out of there right before dark, right before I got to that lake part.
Yeah.
I couldn't film that and do it because it was in a sketchy area and I just want to get out of there. Like that, I reported on the Facebook group, "Hey, this section's washed out. Here's a route around."
Right.
And there's a really good community on that. The website also has, under plan, some pretty good information on trail closures as well.
Okay. All right. Well, that's super cool. Now I do have this map that does show the complete Trans-America Trail. I believe the red line is the original, and the blue line is a different way that you can do it. I'm not real sure.
So they're just different spurs. So if you see Cape Hatteras out there on the coast, this is Trans-America Trail. I'm not sure what website you got this from. I think, no, this is the other guy's website. So there's two guys that have tried to create the route. Okay. This is the second guy. It's a big debate on who did what first.
Yeah.
But if you look at Cape Hatteras, it's where it starts there, but it actually goes up into Virginia and then down through North Carolina along the mountains.
Okay.
So there's two different websites, but Sam Cornero, whatever you pronounce his name, is the original. He's the OG.
Okay. All right. Well, I do remember that there was a competitor, and they were kind of in an argument of who was the original, who started first, who had the idea first, and that'll probably go on forever. Who knows?
Oh, I'm sure I'll get some hate for this too, for saying it was Sam, but yeah, that's okay.
Well, hey, everybody's got an opinion. So I don't know if there's any real evidence to back up either one of them's argument. I don't know. Have you researched that at all?
I haven't. I just know that more people do the version that I'm running on than the other, and the map information is updated regularly. So it's when you buy it, if you've bought it recently, it's the most updated version, and he has people running. Hey, Cindy. So the Mississippi section, for a good example, like that closing. I saw it after I put that I emailed to the website. I saw it on the Facebook group about 8 hours later. So they're pretty on it. Okay.
All right. Well, we're going to talk tonight on this show about your latest trips through Tennessee and Mississippi, and give a few pointers about when you should go, what you should do, and different things like that. But before we do that, before we get into that, we're going to pause for station identification.
Hey guys, it's Porker from Autotronics in West Virginia.
Aaron with Switchback Outdoor Safety. Frankie from Overland Rentals.
And I'm Chris with Re-Rover.
Adam at Step 22 Gear.
It's Chris from More Expo.
I'm Boozer.
I'm Chef West.
Hi, this is Jeff from Re-Rover.
Jordan from Anytime Overland.
Hey, we're Jessica and Jorge.
Live, Work, Wander. And you're watching Professor.
You're watching Professor and Friends.
And you are watching Professor and Friends.
Professor and Friends.
Professor and Friends. Professor and Friends.
Can you get Jessica in this shot?
And I do have a good video of you. I caught you at Big Iron. I'll have you on there. Always with me in my heart with your soothing voice, talking about Professor and Friends. So I appreciate you. I can't remember if I got you up from your nap or whatever, but I definitely got you on there.
I think it was bad.
Oh man. But anyway, I have got your videos off here. I've cut them down to a couple minutes a piece. But what I wanted to do was kind of go through where you started, and then have you talk about it when we talk about each of the video clips. That'll give people something to look at while we're talking about it, and also give us something. Have you able to comment and give some pointers about each one? I know these are both completely different. Tennessee is pretty incredible where you went through there, so I want to take a look at that first. Here's the beginning of it. Check it out.
It's once again that time to finish another section of the Trans-American Trail. Leaving Lexington, Kentucky at 4 a.m., this time we're joined again by our good friend Nathan Straub. We were able to do this section of the Trans-American Trail with help from our partners, X-Venture Trailers, and in association with Overlander.com, and also from our awesome sponsors.
Nathan and I are in Tellico Plains, where I finished up the first section of Trans-American Trail I ever did in from North Carolina down to here.
We did it. Tellico Plains. We did 527.8 miles of the Trans-American Trail, starting from Damascus, Virginia, all the way down the North Carolina section, and ended up here in Tellico Plains.
As per usual, it doesn't take long to get right onto the trail. It's the beginning of spring, and it looks like it's going to be perfect weather for the whole trail. Didn't really know what to expect from this part of the trail, but it didn't take long to see what we're going to be getting into. The Tennessee Mountain has some of the most beautiful mountain streams you've ever seen. been torrential rains the week before, so we didn't know what we were going to get into when it comes to the water crossings. Turns out, we had just enough clearance to make it through these sections safely while running solo. If this first section was a gauge on what the rest of the trail is going to be, this is going to be an awesome trip. If you're looking for a good 3 to 4 day trip and you live in the Tennessee area, I recommend this section above all others we've done so far.
Okay, now that to me was true Tennessee.
Yes.
Every time I've been to Tennessee, I've gone along some highway that runs by a river, water crossings everywhere, waterfalls everywhere, mountain scenery. It has it all. It was just a beautiful, beautiful area to start out on.
And it started out, I mean, it was a mile outside of Tellico Plains. You take a right and there's your first water crossing. It's funny, that log you saw after that first water crossing, I had somebody comment, hey, we were there the week before and we pushed that log out of the way. So, I mean, I'd asked them if they'd done the rest of that trail. They said, no, we played it on that first part because on one section, we probably, Nathan Straub, that was with me, we probably cleared at least 15 larger trees. We might have been the first people on those trails for this year. But there you go. You're saying, what time of year do we do these on? After Mississippi, like seeing Mississippi, you don't need to do this in the winter. But anything in Appalachia, we try to do in the wintertime because with the leaves on the trees, they're just tunnels of just leaves. You can't see anything. At the top of these mountains without leaves, you can see forever. They're much better views.
Right.
What you'll come across though are closed forestry gates. So you're gambling if you go during the winter because you might have to do a few bypasses. We've had to skip 5, 10, 15 mile sections on the first sections, but you're better off going in winter because you can see forever. You can have a better view.
Now, the gates that you're talking about, are those for hunting seasons or things like that?
Those are just forestry gates, forestry trails. They close them during the winter because the forestry they can't maintain them, or if they're full of snow, they're not going to go out there and try to rescue somebody.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Well, that's completely understandable. I get that. I get that. But just seeing just the immediate. Right there where you started, how beautiful it was. And he wanted to get that 0.8 miles in there. It was kind of funny. You talked about that earlier on the motorcycle. He wanted everybody to know exactly how far that you had went. Yeah. And, but getting down into Tennessee, it was just incredible. The scenery that you had just right off the bat. And I've been to Tellico Plains, I don't know how many times, but most of the time it's been on street motorcycles because that's where the Cherhola Skyway is, and that's where the Tail of the Dragon is, and all the great, beautiful motorcycle area. And we're going actually back there in July. So I'm going to be very tempted to pull our motorcycles out there with our FJs because I want to see some of this. That's a beautiful start to.
That was what all those water crossings were in the first 5 miles of the Trans-American Trail in that Tennessee section. All the big ones, the deep ones. And I said we had just enough clearance. Well, that was because they were going halfway up the door. Any further, it'd make me a little bit nervous.
Yeah.
And the difference between Tennessee and Mississippi is I now have a 2.5-inch lift on there, so it's
right.
A little bit more comfortable. With the deeper water crossings.
I definitely can imagine that. So continuing on through Tennessee, let's take a look at the next
little
section.
Pieces of Americana you come across on this trail are worth the trip alone. We love traveling during the wintertime or when there's no leaves or little leaves on the trees because the views are unbeatable. nothing technically too hard about this trail. It's still a lot of fun. The Tennessee section of the Trans-American Trail actually travels through 4 states. It dips down into Georgia, Alabama, and Mississippi. The first little dip down into Georgia is at Copper Hill, Tennessee, where we stopped at the Copper Hill Brewery and had a quick beverage. Then a Cuban sandwich before we hit the road again. Just outside Copper Hill, we hit our first closed section of trail, right at the beginning of the Big Frog Loop mountain area. But luckily, the year before we had already done that whole loop, so we weren't missing any sections of the main trail. We hope this section reopens soon for anybody trying it, because it is something to see. We picked the trail back up 20 miles northwest around Parksville Lake. From the Virginia section all the way through Tennessee, it always amazes me how fast you can change elevation. In this area, we had found a few decent camp spots, but they were very exposed and it was extremely windy at the higher elevations. I know there are beautiful views from out west, but you still can't beat the ones in Appalachia. Make sure you put a waypoint on your maps for Barnes Creek Falls.
Unbelievable. And I love how you do take in a lot of the historical places, the old mom and pop shops that you stop to eat at, and different things like that, because that really helps you take in the area and not just the forest roads and not just the forest. You're actually seeing a part of that part of the country that that normally you may not get to experience ever.
Well, the maps you can download from the site, we put them on Guy, and he'll actually have pretty good information that'll say if you're going across through or near a small town, he'll have a waypoint that just says food, gas, and lodging. So I download the maps and I give myself a good week when I'm just sitting on the couch when we're watching Netflix, and I'll switch between Google Maps and the maps. So I'll go to the downloadable maps and I'll see, oh, here's the town, and I'll go to Google and I'll just search a restaurant or diner. I usually search diner. I refuse to eat fast food on these trips.
Yeah.
I'll look up diner, I'll look up brewery, and I'll mark them in every single little town as we go around to find the most hole in the walls diners. I'm sure I've probably eaten twice as much bad stuff that I would normally, but
yeah,
I don't care. So
I don't care.
No. So like that brewery, and right next to it was a local Cuban spot. That town is right next to where they held the kayaking Olympics. So it's sporting goods stores and it's tiny breweries and tiny hole in the wall restaurants. It is awesome. So I love finding hole in the wall diners. I seek them out. Another thing is you saw the zipping through the forestry trails. That's a pretty normal sight. We probably did 600 switchbacks through North Carolina, where you can only average about 20 miles per hour at the most, because you'll feel like you're about to get some speed, and there comes a line of just potholes all along the way. So you're keeping a consistent speed between 5 and 20 miles an hour on most of this. But it consists, I would say, you've got 1/3 gravel or 1/3 paved back road, country county back road, 1/3 gravel, and then 1/3 unmaintained county roads, aka forestry between dirt and gravel.
Right. But still, you're not running into anything too hard. So anybody out there with a stock vehicle, this is something that you'll want to research and maybe try, because a lot of the stuff out in Utah is not for you. But some of the stuff out east on this Trans-American Trail, you could easily do without having to get out there and making major modifications to your rig, but still being able to get out there and experience the outdoors and running some trails. Now, some Jeep guys may not consider these trails. They may consider that a road.
We're overlanding. We're not rock crawling. We're not
exactly.
We're overlanding. So we've even been on some tougher spots over the Virginia mountains, where like I said, you change elevation extremely quickly. And we come around these corners and these huge switchbacks, and all of a sudden you see this giant camper parked on the side of the road. Someone set up camp. You're just like, okay, they got this up here. But then you also saw the semi in my video that got stuck in that corner.
We're going to see it in a minute.
Yeah, and I think these are county roads. So Google did him wrong. You'll see here in a minute. They took him the wrong way. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, the last Jeep I had, it was a 2-door JK. It was stock height. I had General Grabber X3s or Grabber X3s. They were 33s. That's the most I ever did. This new Jeep, it's a little bit more kitted out, but I did half of what we've done so far on the old Jeep. So yes, it's very doable for anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's
it's
good.
just the pace you want to run.
I think there's a lot of people out there looking.
Yeah, the better suspension, the faster you can run, of course.
Yeah.
But then again, why the whole point's not we go pretty quickly. We want to get the miles through, and that's because we do go through these maps pretty relentlessly, and we've got points of interest we put along the way that we want to see. So, but we also want to get these done in a reasonable time. So there's a nice balance between getting to our waypoints we want to see and getting to them quick.
Now, I do have your Tennessee map that you have done right here, so people can see how you have plotted out everything that you want to do, the waypoints that you have saved, and
so the red ones
like
are
that.
the ones that come from him. The red ones are from the website. If you see the other ones in the mountain, there's more in the mountain areas. Those are the places that I either want to stop or they're potential camp spots, because I mark potential camp spots before we go, because it's always nice to have a bunch of options. And then through the center, so I'm just trying to get through it. There's no waypoints. There's just maybe a gas station. But yeah, I'll even mark, okay, I want to get the drone up in this area. It's legal for me to fly drone in this area, so I'll put a mark there, and it looks like it's in pretty remote and beautiful. So I'll put a mark for that. But yeah, we take quite a bit of time to try to figure out where we want to go.
Okay, somebody's asking what your YouTube channel is. I'm going to answer this, and he answered it for you. It's Overland Pioneers on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. So you can go and follow them. All these videos are uploaded and more. Look at there. He said he's already found it. So we got you a new subscriber, which that awesome. Made it worth the whole show. Okay, well, I'll take this off, and we're going to go to the next section where you start making your way even more through Tennessee on the Trans-American Trail.
It was getting late, and all of our planned camp spots were on the closed section, so we pushed on for another 4 to 4.5 hours just to find a decent forestry camp spot. Between Nathan and I, camp setup went very quick. We were a third of the day past where we had planned camping, so the next morning we weren't in a huge rush. I slept great, but apparently Nathan not so much.
Was it a rough night of sleep?
It was a little rough. There were bears everywhere. Coming into the tents, I fought them off. Jeremiah didn't do a damn thing. I had to do it all myself. My hands are bloodied. I wiped them up clean so you can't see it now. Plus they're under my legs. But we made it. Day 1 in the books. Day 2.
It was about an hour and a half drive to get to Maddie's on Main for some really good country breakfast. For the first day and a half, we had been heading southwest. Now that we're at the bottom of the state, it's time to head west. There was only one last mountainous area to cross through, and that's the Crawford Pigeon Mountain WMA. I'm going to come back to this area just to spend some time in camp. 20 miles down a forestry road coming down the back side of the mountain range, we came across something you just don't see every day. The Google had done him wrong. This poor guy had made it past 6 other switchbacks before getting stuck on this one. We barely made it past. He didn't want help. He was waiting on a wrecker that probably would never come. From this area forward, it looks a lot like Kentucky. We cross over from Georgia to Tennessee, to Alabama, back into Tennessee, and through endless fields of yellow flowers.
That poor semi is probably still sitting there. I mean, it's just.
Well, he looked like a new driver, and unfortunately, in that bend, in the corner of that bend was one of those ramps that go up to a gate. If he'd just backed perfectly up, gone into that, and then backed up the hill, he kind of got out of there. But he was so nervous, poor guy.
Oh, I'm sure.
We had to almost fall into the ditch to get around him, but he didn't want help. So, and he said he was waiting on a wrecker. And I was like, a wrecker, that's never going to come, buddy. But okay.
Well, tell us, did y'all experience a lot of wildlife sleeping out there? Did you see a lot of bears? I know there are tons of bears in Tennessee.
We saw one bear. I saw my first black bear, and they're not as big as you think they are, apparently, but we saw it, and he ran straight up the side of a mountain. I was impressed. I mean, that thing was moving. It was shortly after the semi. Yeah, they was fast, but that was the first black bear I've ever seen. Otherwise, we saw a ton of turkey and maybe 3 or 4 deer. But it's usually all turkey in that area.
Yeah. Well, I some of the places that you said you were going to go back to just to camp. Tell us again where that was.
Let me get on this map here because somebody commented, thought he was picky about the camp spots. Unfortunately, yes, because that, like I said, the section that was closed at that time, I had like 10 camp spots along a river that was potential. But we ended up camping. Where is that spot? I'm looking through my maps. We stopped in some weird little tiny utterly trashed area. Hammond Gap area, which is the Hammond Gap National Forest. And that was it was like a 5-mile stretch of national forest. But the Crockford Pigeon Mountain Wildlife Management Area, that was one of the most well-maintained mountainous cliffed areas that I've ever seen. There was horse riding everywhere. That is somewhere to go. That's in northwest Georgia. Definitely a place to check out.
Northwest Georgia. I wrote that down. I definitely, man, when you stopped and did that video right there I'm a guy who likes views. And so when you were stopped right there on the edge and you could see forever, if you can get up there when the wind's not blowing 35, 40 miles an hour, I mean, you talk about a perfect spot. That is a beautiful, beautiful spot.
Go to their website. They've got predetermined primitive camp areas, and they are primitive. But they are, like I said, really well-maintained areas. So,
definitely. That's cool. That's a good thing to write down and keep on your mini bucket list. So, pretty cool. I love it. So let's finish up with the last part of the Tennessee, and then we'll talk about it some more.
There aren't really any national forest sections through the center of Tennessee. So we ended up finding a campground, the Sycamore Campground and Taco Shack, the same one the Mountain State Overland guys camped at. They weren't open because they had experienced massive flooding, but they still let us camp on the highest ground in the area. Anybody doing the Trans-American Trail, stop here. These guys went above and beyond to make us feel at home. After a good night's sleep, it was got your 6 coffee time. We knew going into this morning, first thing would be a pretty wide water crossing. Due to all the flooding, we didn't know if we could do it. After throwing up the drone, we saw that it was easily passable and continued on our merry way. The trails on the west side of the state are a mix of forestry roads, roads that follow creeks, roads through creeks, where the roads were creeks, but all around beautiful and relaxing. We stopped in the small town of Waterloo at the Waterloo Market for a quick lunch and some gas before heading for the last section of the trail. There was only about 60 miles left, and those last 60 miles were some of the nicest maintained gravel roads through backcountry and logging areas.
So we are near the end, and I was really looking forward to this part of the trail. It crosses over a bunch of long stretches of water that have paved road under the water, and it is majorly flooded. So we're going to pick up here on our next section heading out west and continue on then.
Join us next time when we pick up from where we left off and head west.
Okay, so Cindy had a great question, and since Jeremiah, you are a videographer by trade, and you show your skills on these videos that you do. What answer a question? How do you get the shots while you're driving?
Of the drone shots while I'm driving?
She said, "How do you get those shots while you're driving?" I think it was maybe you held a camera out the window, or you had the drone following you, or
I'm not going to lie. I have my brand new iPhone. It's one of the newest ones. It has the fisheye lens on it. I put it at 4K and 60 frames, and it is an amazing, amazing camera for, especially just a go camera. If you don't have time to bring your camera up real quick, let it turn on. The cell phone does great. The drone shots, you're only illegally allowed to fly a drone from your vehicle in sparsely populated areas. Luckily, the Trans-American Trail goes through sparsely populated areas.
Yeah,
so that was,
definitely.
Yep.
Very
follow
cool.
function
Well,
on the drone is awesome.
We have a you sent me a, I believe this was it right here that showed all the water and the flooding.
Yes. So if you can see all that water there, you'll see here in the Mississippi section, it apparently doesn't typically look like this. So they took this satellite image around, I guess, a similar season when it's just tons of water and flooding through that area. That's what I looked at for the maps. I was like, okay, I guess we're going to be doing a lot of extremely multi-mile water crossings. But as you'll see here in a minute, it's not like that.
Yeah. Well, the end of that video, it was really cool to me how the road just looked like it went right through a lake and came out on the other side of the lake and then went down in another lake. And it was,
I was expecting
incredible.
That just to be a little bit lower, and we were going through. And I was like, okay, let's try it, but not so much.
Yeah,
that was, I think they said 25 foot deep at that point.
Yeah, that definitely would have been boating more than driving for sure. That was a really cool shot of that. How the road just and that's one of the cool things about a drone. You never would have seen that unless you saw it from the air, how the road just went into the water and came out on the other side. And
you saw the other water crossing, so we didn't know how wide it would be. You know, we got a drone up, and you can see how consistent the bed was from drone, because usually when you're looking across water, you're looking across reflections. You can't tell. Right. I mean, you can throw a big rock out in the middle, and if you immediately hear rock bottom, then you know it's not that deep. But being able to, we have an ND filter on our drone and a polarizer on our drone, pointing that sucker straight up and down and turn the brightness way down, you can see how deep that water is. And we saw that it was consistent all the way across. And lo and behold, we drove through it, and it didn't get below a foot deep. So drones can be really nice scouting tools as well.
Yeah. Definitely. I've heard people say that before, being able to go out and scout all kinds of roads or water crossings or anything like that. Drones come in really handy like that, not just for video, but for letting you see what's out there, let you see what's ahead of you. Yeah. Now from Tennessee, your last video that you posted was that of Mississippi. Now tell us the difference that we can look for in the Trans-America Trail between Tennessee and Mississippi.
It's almost like you transported to South Georgia, where the roads go through from really thick rock and gravel and dirt to clay. It goes red real quick. And the difference in speeds on the back roads in Mississippi, we averaged between 38 and 45 miles an hour. In Mississippi, where you could do on the back roads of Tennessee, you're not doing 20 because it's puddles. The clay, I guess it just packs real smooth, and you can fly. But if you hit a wet section, your tires will grab it, and you'll come out on the other end with another 25 pounds of mud on you, because
it's amazing how heavy that is.
Yes,
definitely. And you'll see in some of these videos how caked your vehicle was after going through some of those areas. It was just like Arkansas in winter when you get up into that red clay. It sticks like nasty cheap bubble gum to everything and refuses to come off. And when you get home, a pressure washer has a hard time with it. It is just nasty stuff.
Man, I felt bad for the car wash place I went to. I pulled up, and the old guy taking care of the place just shook his head, and I was like, "I'm sorry, man. I'm going to a show where I put this." He goes, "No, we're used to it, but that's a lot." So I spent an extra $10 just spraying off the area into the drains for him, because
that's cool. That's cool. Well, let's kick off going into Mississippi and see what you experienced down there on the Trans-American Trail.
We are tackling Mississippi in this section of the Trans-American Trail. We were able to do this section with help from our partners, X-Venture Trailers, and in association with Overlander.com, and also from our awesome sponsors. We leave Lexington, Kentucky at 5 a.m. and we have a 5-hour drive to get to our location where we last left off.
Joining us on this trip, no one. Solo time.
5 hours was plenty of time to make sure all of our cameras were charged. In our last section of trail, we finished in Savannah, Tennessee and couldn't go any further due to the flooding. It had been a full month since we tried last time. There's an easy bypass of this section. I just didn't want to take it, and we're extremely relieved to see that it was open. So we did a quick air down and got on our way. These are the smoothest gravel roads that I've ever been on. This area was the perfect way to start a new section of the trail. It also allowed us to tune in the suspension to allow for the weight of the new Putco pet rack. I wish I could have seen this area full of crops.
Now, the first thing I noticed on this was the difference in the last part of the last trip and the first part of this trip. That was the same exact area. If you didn't catch that, that was the same area. One was covered with water previously. Water has now receded, and I didn't see any water in the area. It was amazing how it transformed.
1 month, and just past those trees was the Tennessee River. So I guess that was just a flood basin. But it doesn't look like a lot of land there, but that took at least an hour to get through of straightaways going about 45 miles an hour. That was a big area. So that's a ton of just area for crops. That's a huge farming area. So yeah, that was a lot of water to cover that much space. Yeah.
A lot of water. And if you travel anywhere, if you're a waterfall guy like we are, spring has 10 times, 100 times more water than you do later on in the year. So if you travel these areas in the winter when there's so much more rain, in the spring when there's so much more rain, you're definitely going to have to expect that, because there's a lot of flat land down there, and you may have to go around, just like we saw in your last video. But it was just amazing to me how the scenery was so different from one video to the next, because that was just amazing how it looked like the water went into a giant lake and then came out on the other side. But when you were there a month later, it looked completely different. And so that is a true testament how things can change over just a short amount of time. Super cool. I love the different scenery. You looked like you got into some swampland down in there.
That was at the south end. So that's right before you come out of that basin and come back up to where the dam is to cross the Tennessee River. If you can bring up that map of the close-up. You got yeah. So that's right there at the south end of that little hook at the bottom, and right below where it comes out the bottom of that picture is where you cross the big dam, and that was my first. I don't know if they were cypress trees, but the really wide base that goes into the water. I don't know of any other tree that does that besides cypress. Comment, you guys, if you know what those trees were, but yeah, it was my first time seeing that type of tree. It was kind of cool.
That was super cool. We've got a state park in the eastern part of Arkansas that's a lot like that. It's really cool. I don't know how those trees survive in standing water like that, but I guess that's how they were made. And that's but so cool that that there was such a wide expanse. It was almost like big sky country. It was so flat. When you took that drone way up, you could just see forever. It was just so cool to me how you can see that. So anyway, it looks completely different than Tennessee. It doesn't even look like the same area, even though you're on the same trail. It doesn't even look like the same area. And
that's what's always amazed me. Each one of these sections changes so fast. You can definitely tell. Now I'm traveling around since 4 years ago. I did North Carolina and all these other places. I could definitely tell what state I'm close to, at least just from the trees or the geography of there's no limestone down there even. So just, seeing the different type of rock and granite, it's cool.
Yeah, definitely cool. Well, let's move on through Mississippi.
After crossing the Pickwick Dam on the Tennessee River, it's just a short drive to start Mississippi.
Officially in Mississippi.
I could already tell I was going to make some miles on this trip every day just because of the roads. They were clay and gravel roads and very smooth. A quick stop for lunch at High on the Hog Barbecue. Just like every other state that we've done, the trail usually consists of road, gravel, dirt, gravel, road, and repeating. But at least on this section, we can average around 35 to 45 miles per hour on these back roads, just because of how good the roads are. After the Tennessee section, I'd heard just a little bit of chatter coming from the trailer. Turns out we had broken something pretty crucial. So I looked up fabricators on Google Maps, found one 20 miles away, gave them a call, and they said, come on down. The bracket that Xfinity uses to connect the side post to the bottom of the roof rack had sheared. As soon as I showed up, the guys at Mississippi Metal Magic jumped into action. I didn't want anything pretty, just enough to get me home. I can't tell you how skilled and professional these guys were and how fast they got this done. Thanks Mississippi Metal Magic for getting us back on the road in under 30 minutes. Being one of the early model trailers, they have since fixed this issue and made it out of steel. It's also worth mentioning this trailer's been to the tip of South America on the Pan American Highway, across Canada, Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, hundreds of weekend warrior trips, and half the Trans-American Trail. And this is the first hardware failure that I've seen.
That was so cool how you got right in. They got you right in and got you fixed up. That just shows you how there are super cool people in the world that are willing to help you out.
I literally got on Google Maps and you can say, search an area, and I just said fabricator. First I put welder and I got like you can buy welding supplies here, gas here. So I was like, okay, I need a tradesman. So I did fabricator, and Mississippi Metal Works popped up first thing. I called him. I said, "Hey, you guys welders?" He goes, "Yes." I said, "I've got a camper trailer with a broken bracket. Can I come by and you just make a quick bracket?" The guy said, "Yep, we're here until 5. Come on by." Drove the 20 minutes. I had to zip that off. So this is one of the first X-Venture trailer XV3s. You know the story behind the trailer, but this used to be owned by Expedition Overland. This is the one they took the Patagonian, South America, and Mackenzie Trail, and then I took it over when they got their Patriot sponsorship. And I've taken it all over the place, and this is the first time it's broken on a hardware piece. So that was a pretty good testament how built these are. But that was an aluminum bracket. But after my series of trailers, after the batch of this one, they went to steel on that because they had a few other, I guess, break sooner than this. But yeah, so
that's a pretty critical bracket for sure. If you're living upstairs, so it's a pretty critical bracket to have. But yeah, that's a lot of people may not know that about your trailer, and that is a cool thing about this trail. We're talking about stock vehicles being able to go down this trail. Now your vehicle is built up. And it is a very capable vehicle, but you are still pulling a trailer. And so, that right there tells you that a lot of people, if you have inhibitions about going out on some trails or going on some well-known trails, or even the trails that are well-known out west, and you're thinking, I don't know if my vehicle can do that, the Trans-American Trail may be something that you might want to start on because it's not quite as difficult. And you'll be able to take whatever you've got down it and still be able to enjoy a lot of the good scenery that you can enjoy just about anywhere else. So it's pretty cool.
The Trans-American Trail goes through the Alpine Loop, and they even say that a lot of the Alpine Loop is, that's just a regular four-wheel drive worthy. It goes through Imogene Pass. I don't know if I'm correct on that one, but I think that's what I heard. But yeah,
I think it does. I think it has engineers over, and then you pick up on Imogene, and you drop down into Telluride, and then continue on from there.
At the right speed, you can take anything on this trail. We air down the tires in the trailer a lot more. We take it down to about 18 to 20 psi.
Yeah,
because they're a light trailer to begin with, and if you don't air them down, they get really bouncy because we don't carry a lot of weight in that trailer. So it's just. Prepare, know what you need to do with the tires. Air down. Everyone's like, oh, well, you're going to be on a lot of roads too. Air down, just take your time. So
yeah, definitely. Chad wants to know when you're coming back to the 4-state area.
What is the 4-state area?
I don't know. There's a lot of states that are in groups of 4. Well, you may have to be more specific on that, Chad, and we'll come back to you. Jeremy talks about he hadn't heard of the TAT until now. How many days would you guess or allow for the whole trail?
Oh man, I couldn't even tell you. I know
big guess.
I know that a group of guys built up some brand new Land Rovers off the line, and there's a series out there. I don't know what it's called, but they did coast to coast, and they did it in like 34 days, but they bombed it.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe a month and a half, 2 months would take you, going safe speeds or decent speeds. You'd probably have to allow for that because you don't know. One thing that you have to think about when you're doing the whole trail is if there's going to be any closed sections. And if you have to bypass, it's going to cost you more time. Depends on the time of the year. If you come to a flooded area, you'll have to bypass.
How much time do you want to drive a day? The first day of Mississippi, we did leaving Lexington until we got to, it was 5 hours down there. So we got there around 10 and we drove till 8 at night. So
yeah,
that's a long day for the first day. The second day, we did 6 hours and we finished the rest of it. And then we drove out to Big Iron Overland Vent. So it's just how many hours if you do an 8-hour day, then it's going to take you a lot longer. If you can keep your keister in that seat and go and plan accordingly, you can cut some days out. Missouri, Kansas, Arkansas, and Oklahoma.
That's the 4-state area. So
well, as soon as I pick up from Mississippi on will be the next section, which is I've already looked at the maps, and it's, drive 30 miles straight down a back road, take a left. go that far, take a right, and then you through the Ozarks is the only next section that's actually, probably wheeling, and then after the Ozarks, it's the flyover states, and I've been told by Brandon from Trailspin that it's just drive, turn, drive.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just relentless.
Yeah, the like the Oklahoma Adventure Trail that's out there, it's pretty much a big giant square over Oklahoma.
How
it's
adventurous
just you drive 5 million miles west, you drive 5 million miles south, you drive 5 million miles east. I mean, it's just like a big giant square. So I can imagine all the flyover states definitely are just straight, then hang a left, straight, hang a left, straight, hang a left. I'm sure you'll come around this way here pretty soon, but you never know. Are you planning on finishing the whole thing?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's cool.
The next time we're heading out west, though, is for the Outside Adventure Expo. We're going to spend a few days in the Salt Flats area before that, but we're going out there for Red Arc and hanging out with them. And then we're going to probably maybe spend a few days in Colorado and then head back. But I'm just really having a hard time wrapping my head around doing those middle states on the Trans-American. I've got to do them, but I
understand. You started it, you want to finish it. You just got to pick out a time for sure. Yep. When is that event that you're going to? Is it this year?
Next month.
End of June. Okay.
Yeah. I think it's the 24th.
That's cool.
6th. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's continue on through Mississippi. See what you went through here.
All day I've been extremely happy at the pace that I've been able to maintain. There are some very slow sections that you have to take your time on, especially if this area has lots of rain. It is clay and mud, and it sticks to everything. The tope road came in very handy in this section, keeping me straight in line going down slick trails, using the trailer almost as an anchor. Oh, and thank you, logging truck, for the nice chip in the windshield. Mississippi isn't a long section, and one day we did about 3/4 of the trail, finding our first camp spot in Holly Springs National Forest. This happens to be one of our top camp spots of the year so far. It was a 15-hour day of driving, so being able to find campsite gold and relax was everything. Going to bed early was not a problem, with the sound of a million frogs serenading us to sleep. After a quick camp breakdown, I got the drone up to check out the area. It definitely pays to spend a lot of time on maps before you go somewhere and try to pick out a few camp spots, at least have 1 or 2 backups. Luckily I didn't need one, and this place was perfect.
Now, tell me, and so those up there who may not be quite as experienced as you are with pre-planning your trip, how do you go about picking your camp spots on a map?
The satellite with labels map and Gaia GPS has pretty nice overlay on it where there's national forest on there. And they say they want you to camp at least, 150 feet off a main trail on a national forest.
Yeah.
So we'll just pre-download maps on a big swath around the main trail, and I'll look for a nice cove or next to a lake or some water where there's just a forestry trail spurring off. And I love a good dead end because then you can back in and have a good exit plan if you need to, if crap goes the wrong way. But for this one, I just kept scanning maps. It takes time. Go through and try to find the closest camp spot to the trail without too much wheeling so you can get out and get started the next day. But that one was a lucky one. When I got there was a guy fishing, an old timer fishing, and he had just rode his bike in from, I guess he said, 1.5 miles away was his little cabin. And I said, hey, is this, I've looked, I also check if they're private property boundaries, because Guy has a private property and that said National Forest on as well. And he said, no, you won't have anybody bother you down here. This is pretty out of the way. And I said, that's great to hear. So Gaia GPS, the satellite with labels, I use that a ton. Just because you can automatically see where the National Forest is. And just scan maps, just scan. Yeah. A lot of the roads that are on these maps, you'll see on the satellite image, that's just a dirt road going somewhere. I follow a lot of those. You take a gamble having to turn around, but I follow a lot of those, and I found some pretty good gold. What you didn't see in the video that I didn't put on there was about 5 a.m. there was a beaver in that lake, and he was slapping his tail in that water. It sounded like a 22 rifle going off, and he was telling me he was there. So I took the drone over and I flew it around his little hut. You wake me up in the morning, I'm going to wake you up in the morning.
I love it. Torture the animals. I love
yes.
So, do you ever use anything else like Google Earth or anything like that to spot?
I will.
Good
Google
places?
Images typically are more updated. Again, you can see where a lot of gravel or dirt roads are that just kind of lead off into nowhere. But again, I always go back to and I check private boundaries, make sure I'm not trespassing. I check where we're going to go. It's just, you don't want to be pulling up on someone's property, especially in the hills.
Right.
You might come out with a few extra holes in your vehicle.
Right. Now this may be a dumb question, but I'm not a Jeep guy, so it may be a Jeep thing. But you showed a little picture of something that helped you go straight in the mud. Now, tell me what that is.
That was a Tow Pro. That's just a brake controller.
Okay.
That's the Red Arc Tow Pro. So it's an inertia driven brake controller. So normally you have this big box that you have mounted underneath your dash that your knee's always hitting.
Right.
This is a small unit about that big that you mount underneath your dash, out of the way, and you just run a little dial and you just hit that dial anywhere you mount on the dash, and you can dial it up and dial it down. It's got two modes. One, the harder you brake, it fills your inertia. It applies more brakes to the trailer. Or off-road mode, where you can actually dial up and dial down. So if you're starting to skid out down a muddy hill, you can lock that trailer out, and it'll put you straight. It's a really, really functional brake controller. And when you mount it, it calibrates itself to the direction you're going. You got to speed up and brake, because it'll calibrate that way. Once it's calibrated, it's done. And it's just that tiny knob instead of that big box on your dash. It is awesome.
Oh, that's huge. That's huge for people out there towing. If you're towing a trailer at all, that would be extremely helpful for no matter what kind of terrain.
So it's comparable to other brake controllers, and it's a smaller unit. It's out of the way, and they also have wiring kits for pretty much every vehicle out there, where it's plug and play.
Cool.
Yeah,
very cool. Now I want to show on here the map that you had for Mississippi. This shows us where you mapped it out. And like you said, the red is the Transamerica Trail, and then you plotted your GPS places that you went on there.
You can kind of see the darker green at the right in the middle, and then the very bottom of that loop on the bottom, you see a tiny piece of green. So I know those were national forests, so I just started looking in there and seeing where the camp spots would be. The yellows are potential bypasses, because I'd already read that some of these areas might be muddy and bad, so I went ahead and mapped potential bypasses if I needed them. Luckily, I only needed one that I didn't have marked, but it was only a 2.5 mile bypass, which was really nice. So I didn't have to skip too much of the trail. Yeah.
So how much, give us an idea of how much time you put into researching this before you ever left the house?
Oh, wow. Hell, I don't know. Most of the time is just looking up diners in small towns, man.
Yeah.
Because he's figured out a pretty amazing trail and a pretty reliable trail. Like the area that was washed out and closed down, that one was a pretty remote forestry trail, but the rest of these are pretty traveled trails. So they keep pretty nice. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, let's finish up Mississippi and see what you saw at the end.
I don't have an extremely long drive day today. And after Holly Springs National Forest, there are no more national forests in this state. After a few hours of driving country roads, we finally hit the plains areas. This is the furthest west that I have driven so far, so seeing roads go on forever straight, make a turn, and then straight on again was a unique experience. On the East Coast, we don't have straight roads this long. Mississippi reaffirmed why I love overlanding. Every turn brings something different. Interactions with the local culture, the ever-changing geography, and the friendships we make along the way. This section ends crossing the Mississippi into Arkansas. I did not expect much out of Mississippi being a shorter section, but I was pleasantly surprised. Follow along, and thanks for watching.
Now that was a great ending to your trip. It's amazing how it started or ended completely different than how it started. You definitely ended up in the Delta region, for sure, where you talked about earlier, where you go a long way straight and then make a right. So it was pretty good ending. How do you feel overall about these two sections that you did?
Tennessee was the most diverse and beautiful because you went from the Tennessee mountains and then straight through the center of Tennessee, which was kind of flat. It was rolling hills, but it was kind of flat. And then on the other side, it felt like, Alabama felt like Alabama. You know, you've watched movies your whole life, and it's Sweet Home Alabama. It's you see swamp, you see all this stuff. You get to Mississippi, and the dirt immediately changes. So each state, it stands up to the next one. Virginia, West Virginia, North Carolina, and parts of Tennessee were all the same. It's all Appalachia. It's all mountains. The beautiful parts are the water crossings and the small towns you come into. This was where it really started. Tennessee is where it really changed. Like the Big Frog Loop area. There's something called the Smoky Mountain 500. It's a 500-mile loop around the Smoky Mountains in that area. It's a great trail to try to get into. And there's also something called the Big Frog Loop and the Cahata Trail. It's the same thing. I have another video on that one. It's a 74-mile loop around the same area the Trans-American Trail goes through in the Smoky Mountains down there in Tennessee and Georgia. Beautiful. If you want to see a good representation of what the Georgia-Tennessee mountains look like, the Big Frog Loop is the one to do. But as soon as we hit that last Georgia WMA area, after that, it was all just rolling hills until flat, and then a little bit of rolling hills, and then Mississippi. So,
super flat.
Yes.
Yeah, super flat.
But it was funny, on the way to Big Iron Overland Rally, it went from those really flat plains and then going right on the south end of the Ozarks, which was my first time driving that area. And that is more mountainous, it seemed like, than a lot of Appalachia. Yeah. Beautiful.
It's really underrated. A lot of people don't see Arkansas having mountains. The people that have mountains think we have hills. And so, but once you go through a lot of the eastern section of Arkansas or Mississippi or even eastern Tennessee, and then you start getting into some of those mountains, you think, wow, they're bigger than what I thought. And Arkansas is really underrated when it comes to that. But seeing all the different things out in Tennessee just really make me want to go back. The mountains are calling. It's about to get hot here, and I'm seeking some elevation. So bring on the mountains.
It gets smoldering. I mean, the Appalachians are actually a rainforest. So if you go middle of the summer, it's hot, but it's still beautiful.
Still beautiful. Well, Jeremiah, I appreciate you being on here. What's coming up next for Overland Pioneers?
So we're gonna head out Salt Flats. We're gonna do the Outside Adventure Expo, hang out with those guys. We're we've got some bigger trips in Colorado later this year, the Keweenaw Overland Adventure Retreat, and then we're going to spend a bunch of time up there in the north. If the Canadian border ever opens, we're going to go straight to Canada. We love the Northeast. Love, love, love. We did Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, like we talked about the other day. But a lot of starting to hit out west, starting to hit some of the bigger trails, and trying to get some bucket list item off there.
I guarantee you. Well, and last year people wasn't able to go out west a lot like what we normally do, because a lot of it was closed. And even if you got out there, you couldn't. There were so many restrictions, you really couldn't do anything or couldn't go anywhere or anything like that. So thank God 2021 is opening up. The world's opening back up again, and we can get back out there. And I'm definitely going to have you on again and talk about the Nova Scotia part, because we talked about that at Big Iron, and you set me on fire for that area up there. I've never been up north around the Great Lakes, and I have a trip planned in the 1st of July to do a motorcycle trip up around the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. I've never done that before, so super excited to get up there and see that. And I'm a kayaker, so the places up there that you can go, and the boundary waters are just all up there is just very intriguing to me, and I definitely want to get up there. And I've been out west and I've seen that, but I've never been north, and I want to go north, and so we'll definitely have you on to talk about that.
Let me show you my maps real quick from up there. Cindy from Northology got me head over heels about the UP. So we've been, if you can see that, come on, dim. That's the map
I see it.
Making. Those are all our waypoints we've been doing for a few years now. So we've covered quite a bit of it, and we love it up there. So it's one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. Yeah,
definitely want to head up there, and Cindy says Joey, come up. So I'm coming up there, Cindy. I'm coming. I promise. I'm gonna be up there. Well, hey Jeremiah, I appreciate you being here. Appreciate you telling us about the Trans-American Trail. We even had people on here who had never heard of it, and that's one of the oldest trails out there. So pretty cool to talk about it and actually see a part of it. So I hope we were able to show you a little bit of what you've never seen before, answer a few questions, be a little bit entertaining, and maybe you got something out of it. So anyway, Jeremiah, I appreciate you being here and taking a little bit of time out of your day to help us spread the word about Overland Pioneers. I want to encourage everybody to go to overlandpioneers.com, follow them on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, and show him a little support. He's out there putting out good content and entertaining us all. And if you come to More Expo next year, and by the way, I will be announcing this probably as soon as we get off here. But those of you who love More Expo, the biggest expo in the Midwest, is now going to be in April of 2021. We're moving it away from Valentine's Day. Everybody griped about that, the 18,000 inches of snow that we had to deal with this year. So we're moving it to April. It's going to be so much better. The weather's always so much better, and we are excited to do that.
Just got the text from Chris. Hey, spread the news.
Me too.
So good for you,
me
man.
too.
Good for you.
Me too. So we'll be putting that out there shortly. Hey, thanks for joining us. We appreciate you being here. I'm the Professor, and this is my friend, and I hope y'all have a wonderful, wonderful week. Take care.